In the middle of Indonesia, the most populous Muslim nation on earth, there is a tiny island where the people are almost all Hindu. The island is Bali, and the Balinese share their daily lives with the legendary Hindu gods and heroes that have walked and danced on the island for 1,000 years. Over the last 30 years, another group of legendary figures has captured their imagination dancing on water. This grainy old film we made in 1976 to show how the first Balinese boys broke through centuries of superstition about the sea and took to the water on surfboards. They learned by borrowing boards from the visiting Australian and American surfers they saw performing on the waves in front of their homes every day. The old film went on to show how the first generation of Balinese mastered the sport within a few years. Soon they were joining up with some of the best foreign surfers in the world and exploring the island for new surfing spots and better waves. It used to take half the day just to get to where they thought the waves might be breaking, and then maybe a good 2-kilometre hike to the beach. For those first boys, it was more than a struggle down a cliff. It was a journey out of 1,000 years of belief. For the 3 million Hindu people on the island have always believed their gods live in the mountains, but the sea is the home of their demons and evil spirits. A quarter of a century later, the scene has changed radically. Surf paparazzi can make the same journey in a matter of minutes, chasing photographs of some of the best surfing waves in the world. And these young surfing stars are the second generation of surfing on the island, and the sons of those who saw surfing completely change their island forever. Once the surf magazines and videos spread the word about the perfect waves, surfing tourism arrived in a big way.
3, 2, 1, bungee.
Party lovers and sun seekers followed, and in the 80s and 90s, the island boomed. This was great news for the economy, but like so many paradises, it's had a hard time keeping up with the environmental impact, like water supply, hotel sewage, and burning plastics. The kids who started the boom are now concerned about protecting the island's future.
Saudara-saudara, jadi pertemuan pada sore hari ini selesai.
This is the original get-together of their surfing club we filmed at Kuta Beach back in 1976. We've returned to track down the 9 boys we featured in that film to discover how they're now living their adult lives. This is their story about their sport, their island, their past, and their new concerns for the future.
Akan kami sebut ayan.
We'll see who's done well and who hasn't, who's still surfing and who's not.
Nah, untuk itu saudara-saudara,
The first boy relocated has turned out to be quite a businessman, Wayan Suenda. Even back then, he was already learning everything he could about the surfing industry, so he was in the right place at the right time when the world went crazy for surf fashion. But to Wayan back then, surf fashion meant a plastic belt holding up a pair of cut-off jeans.
With the board shorts, we saw so big, and I have to type the plastic, you know, on the round, make sure not
He
so
was pretty
full.
skinny then.
I was very skinny. We don't eat peanut rice that time.
Oh, you just got married, didn't
We
you?
just get married, we get pregnant, we have to marry.
My mother will die.
We used to have the restaurant in the bar too. You know, we call the bar is unbalanced.
The unbalanced bar.
Yeah, an unbalanced bar. Yeah, still surfing, I still. But I don't surf like I used to. But I'm going like 6 feet or 7 feet, and big on that one, I'm thinking twice. I'm too old, you know. Not too old, I'm still, you know. I just like for surfing for fun.
When surfing fun kick-started a whole new boom on the island, the surf fashion labels came looking for people like Wayan to manufacture and sell their products. The money they invested locally allowed other industries to flourish, everything from batik fabric to internet design. But it was surf fashion that proved the real boost to local industry. Quicksilver alone, at its peak, was manufacturing 180,000 t-shirts a year. Surfing became a multi-million-dollar industry. And Wayan was the perfect man for the Billabong license.
What?
I can't sleep last night.
Why?
I don't know.
Billabong became a huge global corporation, recently floating on the stock exchange for almost $500 million. Wayan is now responsible for all of Indonesia. The locals call him Mr. Billabong. Busy times for Wayan, but his 3 children make certain he mixes the business with the pleasure. To them, pleasure means family.
I like surf with my dad. My dad gave me more waves than the other guys. He's a legend.
Hey man, you good? I'm good.
Luckily for a busy Mr. Billabong, Kuta Reef is only 5 minutes from home. The waves break over the coral reef about a kilometre out to sea, and Wayan was one of the first kids to surf it. But even at 45 years of age, he still looks good keeping up with his son Rory. They say the family that surfs together relates together. But you wonder which side of this family the children relate to most.
I feel more Hindu than Australian because I more hang out with all the Balinese here. So I pretty more feel like I'm true Balinese.
I feel more being in both sides. It really depends on, like the mentality. It's both sides. I know how to adapt with the Balinese, or I should say Indonesian side of things, and I would know how to adapt with the Western side.
I'm trying to make like chanang. I'm trying my best to be like Balinese. It's very hard.
Surfing has given Wayan and his Australian wife Susie the satisfaction of a successful business. Now they're determined to give something back to a new environmental movement which they say is long overdue.
It's everybody's responsibility.
kita semua juga akan juga menjaga lingkungan.
So to be really serious.
Bukannya pemerintah, juga hotel-hotel yang besar juga harus. Kalau ini terlambat lagi 5 tahun, bisa-bisa turis tidak akan datang ke Bali lagi.
The second boy we filmed, even back then, was the slick salesman of the group. He opened Kuta's very first surf shop in 1974. Here he is, Joe Darsana. And he chose a very inventive name for it too. Joe grew up in this sleepy fishing village, before electricity, plastic bottles, and pedestrian crossings. The Westerners hung out here, waiting for the perfect swell to appear on the horizon, and provided the first market for the enterprising Balinese. Surfing became a household word.
Everybody likes now because they know that it's kind of sport and they're interested to ride it on the wave. You see, they really enjoy it, you know. This kind of show when all the old people sing this, all the young surfers ride on the wave. You know, they, especially when someone who ride a very, very good wave, we said, wow!
25 years later, Joe's new shop is one of 100 surf shops on the island, more per capita than anywhere in the world. But although he's gone way up market these days, the basic idea is still the same: sun, fun and style.
This one, what you call this color? Off-white? Yeah. Stones. Okay, you got try? You try it what sizes?
With life so full of retail prices, wholesale invoices and shop repairs, it's become more and more difficult for Joe to squeeze in time for a surf. But he's down here enough to see that if they want to keep the tourists hanging out, they'll have to keep plastic and hotel sewage off the beaches. He says he hears this sort of environmental chat more and more in his newest enterprise.
Cooking noodle, my friend. Noodle special bamboo.
So when did you open this place, Joe?
About 1 year ago.
Best beer in Bali.
My name is Joe. What's your name? Greg. Nice to meet you, Greg.
Greg.
Nama Greg. Oh, two Gregs.
Craig.
Oh, Craig. Greg. Okay. You want me to serve you again?
Joe still loves his traditional Balinese massage, even though the massage scene has also gone way upmarket.
I'm just happy, not rich. I'm just getting enough. I support my kid to school. I have a small house with the family. Well, I'm not get stressed much for my old age life. I enjoy my life. I don't say I'm religious, but I'm learning. I'm learning what the really mean of this life.
Joe may be a bit too busy on the phone these days to spend a lot of time worshipping, but the third boy we tracked down does, Yeoman Rantuk. Yeoman won his first contest in 1976. His future in surfing looked very bright, but in the end, he didn't embrace the commercial side of modern Bali. He was always a religious kid. Even with no running water, he used to spruce himself up after a surfing session and get out to the hotels and bargain. And it was the religious items he enjoyed bargaining the most.
This is dragon, you know. Big snake. See? And king monkey and the dragon.
So that is a good spirit.
Yeah. This one is king monkey, as Hanuman, and with Sita. You know.
So how much are these all together?
The best price, you know. If you want to know my start, just 10,000 rupees. This is my good price to just. That's a very low price I start.
And a low price for more than one?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, good.
Now he's a Hindu priest and one of the main spiritual leaders in Kuta, looking after their temples, rituals and festivals. He also works very closely with the heads of tourism to make sure their rapid expansion leaves some room for the temples. And we found him, still living in the same compound, relaxing with his 15-year-old son, Wyan de Boer.
Now I'm start for surfing, you know. As before I'm surfing, it's finished already. I'm a big freshman, and after that, now I start to my son surfing, you know, as I teach the way to go.
The boy and his father have seen so many of the foreign surfers arrive and go through radical mind shifts because of their time hanging out with the Balinese. But the father says it also works the other way round, and that surfing's been the best thing that's happened to him, and now to his children.
Within the last 10 minutes, surfer on white and a 2 right, surfer on orange, 1 right.
Yeoman says he's watched the sport become more competitive and driven by prize money. Some of his original surfing mates have set up contests to help the new kids keep up. They've also started a surf magazine, which helps spread the culture right across Indonesia.
The latest issue is a special people issue about the people of surfing in Indonesia, all the local surfers and younger local surfers as well. I think it's great. I think it's working great. The kids they're often talking about it and sitting around looking at it together and laughing about it. Like picking up tips and learning about themselves through pictures of themselves and stories of themselves.
Come and pick up your free copy of Surf Time magazine, the original indoor surf mag. We've got plenty of copies here at the tent. 2 more riders to go through to the final. Okay then, surfers, you still have 15 minutes left. Masih tinggal 15 minutes.
Wayan's father, the priest, has left the surfing contest, magazines and surf photography behind. But like all good fathers, he pays the bills by looking after the spiritual needs of his mates from that first club that have gone into the business. He makes a good living blessing their temples of commerce daily and all the goodies inside.
I always start get offering from in the morning about 10 o'clock. We just say to the God, stay here, look after the shop, and that's a good luck. That's all. I mean, you know, people really love it, this place. That's all. If people bad come to here, I tell it, be happy, and no fighting, and be friendly, everybody.
Yeoman told us that the ancient Hindu teachings have always taught a concern for environmental protection, teaching harmony between humans, their gods and their environment. Adapting those teachings to modern Bali is his new challenge. The fourth surfer in our story is the legendary Gede Namada. Back in 1974, he was the first to get married. He drove tourists around the island on the back of his motorbike to support his Balinese wife and 2 babies. With the grand total of 10 pairs of shorts, 5 t-shirts and 2 surfboards, Gede soon opened a shop to support his surfing habit. Gede was the brave hero of the group, and no wave was too big for him. Here he is on the left, getting dropped in by another mate from that first club. They used to surf out here in the tropical sun for hours, which used to disturb their parents.
Every time when I go back to the village, my mother say, "Oh, you look different. Your skin so dark. Your hair's go light. You know, why you want to be like this?" And I say, "I don't want to be like this. I just interesting what I'm doing."
Since we last talked with Gede, those kids have grown up and he started a new family. this time with a Japanese wife, and today the Balinese surfer, his Japanese wife and their Australian architect are planning a dream home.
You have a PlayStation room?
Yeah, PlayStation
God, you're
room.
lucky. You're luckier than me.
We know
But
here.
some of
Yeah,
those-
from here too.
Yeah.
So I'm a bit worried about here.
Well, some of those low areas, we can build them up. We can build them up, you know, we'll step the levels down above ground level,
and
okay?
follow the
So you can
the
do all
structure of the
yeah,
land,
just
yeah.
follow the
Yeah.
structures of the land
Yeah.
down.
Cool, cool.
Well, the game's going to be fairly simple, yeah?
Yeah.
We're going to keep it really simple.
It's not so surprising to see so many of the Balinese boys like G'day marrying Japanese girls, when you consider the Japanese now make up the largest number of visitors to the island.
マミ、どっち取った方がいい？
まだダメよそれ。
Oh, you take papaya? Oh. Oh, nice. You want to get the mommy? Papaya, nice papaya.
気をつけてね。
I see you before sunset, man. We try to have dinner together.
じゃあね。
Bye.
G'day the legend has perfected the art of finding the biggest waves. And his favourite spot is on the southern coastline, this place. The big waves come all the way up from Australia in the roaring 40s. And when they come that far, they can do some real damage.
It's real damage. But I didn't damage anybody, just damage me.